the audio, or if you can't, just let me know. Today, we're going to be talking about AEO or GEO AI search broadly. I selected this topic for a few different reasons. At the beginning of the week, I had several different law firms coming to me in consults, requesting audits, and then my own clients saying, Tifiny, something's going on with the website. Or they're talking about leads, how leads have tapered off since March. And sometimes these things are unrelated. We have a decline in leads in March. It just as easily could be that the school season, spring break, made it so fewer people are going to reach out to a law firm. Generally, we see surges in outreach in May and June, kind of falling off midsummer and then picking back up in the fall. That seems to be the typical rhythm of personal injury cases, although a lot of variability in there. But, a lot of law firms seeing a lot of volatility with their sites. And by the way, I just want to make sure, just because it happened once where the audio didn't pick up, let me know. Type in a message into chat if you can hear me okay. But what I'm seeing now is a lot of volatility on websites. And yesterday, I actually published an article about the crawled but not indexed report in Google Search Console. And if you didn't see that article, and if you haven't looked at your Google Search Console report in a while, I really highly recommend that Google Search Console, set an account up for your site. Sometimes it's really easy if you already have access to the Google Analytics account. And then look at your pages report or your pages and engagement report. I forget exactly what it's called. But you will see a report that shows you crawled but not indexed, redirect issues, 404 issues, generally any issue that Google detects on your site with its people's ability to search your site, right? And you want to go and check your crawled but not indexed report, because what I'm seeing broadly across many of the websites that I have access to that either I've audited over the years, I've worked with them as a client, or they're a friend and they just had me take a look at their website. If they're a personal injury law firm, what we're seeing are many blog, FAQ, video, and even Spanish pages being added to this crawled but not indexed report. And what it essentially means is Google is taking pages that were once indexed. And if you don't know, index means that Google shows that particular page on a search engine result page. Google is removing sites that have been previously indexed and putting them into this crawled but not indexed bucket. And so if you look at your own report, you'll probably see a blog page that was once added, that was once, maybe a blog page that Google served for that particular query. You'll see that it's crawled but not indexed. It's not being shown. And so it introduces the question, like, what do we do? And I think broadly, Google has recently announced they're going all AI. So the Google search interface is going to be more like ChatGPT in the future, where you show up, there's a little search bar, you can type in your question, and Google will provide a response that's like AI results now, a synthesis of results from other websites or its training data. And so with that major change in Google search, and let's be honest, like Google has been and continues to be the dominant search engine for most people. Now, seeing some volatility there, we're seeing people leave Google and prefer things like DuckDuckGo, ChatGPT, or other search engines. I don't know what they are because I really only use Google myself. And we're seeing, people maybe kind of leave Google and use other tools, but by and large, I don't think we should expect a wave of people to suddenly reject Google. I think people will continue to use the tool that they've been using forever. And honestly, my life is pretty integrated with Google when I think about it, and maybe yours too. I have an Android device, I have a Google Workspace, I have a Gmail, I have a Google Photos account, Google Drive. All of these tools are under that larger Google umbrella, and it gives them a huge advantage because once you have people so embedded in using your service, it's difficult to leave it, which is what Google has created. It's honestly a genius business. So I don't think we should expect people to stop using Google in light of the changes being made. I think we ought to temper our expectations. And I'm sorry, the kids are home from summer break. Sweetie, what can I do for you?
Can you tell me how far you're not letting your bird play on your tablet?
Okay, go in there and tell your sister I'm in a meeting and you need to play on her tablet, okay? Okay. Yeah. So, fighting over tablets here at home. And I'm sure that tablet runs on Android, actually. No, it's an Apple tablet, just kidding. Anyway, so we have to be thinking, like, one, Google might be removing a lot of pages from your website from the search engine result page. And Google is converting to this kind of all AI format. And so what we ought to start talking about is what we've been doing for our websites and what we've been doing for SEO. And does it still serve us? Does this still serve our goals? That's a huge question right now. So actually, I keep glancing over here because in front of me, I have Google's optimizing your website for generative AI features on Google search article. I will share this link in the email that goes out whenever we finish up this video, and you can look at it yourself. I'm going to tell you what I read here, because in the world of SEO and digital marketing, there's a lot of snake oil, and sometimes it's snake oil and the person knows it's snake oil, and sometimes it's snake oil and it's just something we've been repeating over and over, that's generally been accepted as the truth, but may not be. And there's a lot of magical thinking in search engine optimization, far more than there needs to be, truthfully. So I like to go back to, any reasonable person should, the data. Like, what do the numbers tell us? And Google Search Console is telling us that Google doesn't like a lot of the pages that are on our site now anymore. They're taking them off search. And so they may not have value to us from a business perspective. Now, you could approach the problem as maybe those pages weren't good enough. How do we make them better and something that Google actually wants to see? And I have an answer for that. So we'll get into it here during the course of the call. So I guess the top part of this article is about, is SEO relevant for generative AI search? And the boring answer, at least according here to Google and what I think is true, because sometimes you can't really trust. Like, let me say this before I get into what's in this article and how we should take information from Google. Goodness, I'm just all sorts of distractions today. So you have to keep in mind that Google doesn't want their algorithm publicly known. Like, if everyone knew how to manipulate Google's algorithm, and by manipulate, I say like publish a website that is the algorithm likes and like hack, our way to the top of search. If everyone knew that, there'd be no point. It would just be businesses who were either good businesses with good marketing, or more likely bad businesses with good marketing, competing for the top position in search. Give me just a second, guys. Sorry. So now I got to get back on my train of thought. Live broadcasts are always so messy, and that's why I kind of hate them. So blah, 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 blah. Google is not going to reveal to us exactly the secrets of how they program their algorithm. And so we treat these documents that Google is giving us as the truth, at least as they want us to know it, or at least part of the truth. And I don't think Google is going to intentionally mislead us. If Google is telling us definitively yes or definitively no, I'm going to say that's probably accurate, even though they have quite literally said untruths in the past. But anyway, that's another whole nother video. So is SEO still relevant to AEO, AGO? Yes. But I also think that people have different ideas of what good SEO looks like. And so we have to step back and it's like, what is good search engine optimization? And I think a lot of people still think good SEO is publish an article every week, get more backlinks, write long articles. We don't want quote unquote thin content. And schema markup, maybe, is on that list. If you're on LinkedIn a lot and hear a lot of the discourse about AI search, you're going to probably think of all those things. But SEO is actually a much bigger discipline and practice than just those things, just what most SEO companies have provided for their clients. And really, to do true search engine optimization, the search engine team has to be an integrated part of the law firm or the business itself. Because a lot of what SEO does, it trickles down from marketing to operations. Google is even recording our phone calls. If you're doing local service ads, they are definitely doing this. They're recording your phone calls and evaluating the real people who answer your phones and if people get a good experience. And what I see with local service ads over and over is that the law firm who has their intake team locked down, they have people answering the phones immediately, calling back immediately, following up with leads. They get better results from local service ads than the law firms who are, turning it on, letting calls go to an answering service or a receptionist who has half the duties of the law firm, on her plate, or just plain somebody who doesn't care. Usually it's the most junior employee at the firm who's answering the phones. And it's no surprise when they don't deliver on the good experience that they should be providing, potential clients. So, true SEO is much bigger than just content and backlinks. I'm so over content and backlinks. And maybe that's why I'm so enthused about how SEO is changing, because it got to be a thing where it wasn't really marketing, right? We were just writing, how many variations of this city page can we create? And we weren't even looking at the substance of the content, just is it long enough? Does it have enough backlinks? And we weren't asking, are we answering this question better than somebody else? Like, is this the full story? And, I'm guilty of telling a few attorneys like, oh, you don't need to be rewriting these articles, making them complicated, because the SEO team can do that. It's not a big deal. I am guilty of getting complacent when it comes to putting up content on the site and getting backlinks. And that is really part of the problem. I was part of the problem here. And that's why we're starting to see a lot of our pages being de-indexed, right? Because we treated those pages like a commodity. We treated those pages as something bought and sold, that interchangeable parts of our business. All we needed was just enough city pages or enough pages about unique injuries that Google cared and ranked us for those keywords. Those days are gone. And we all should be I think really happy, because now it means we can actually do honest to goodness real marketing. So forgot where I got here, but I'm going to get us back on track. Is SEO still relevant to AEO or AGO? Yes. And the reason why is all of these AI tools are doing their own searches whenever you type a query in. So if you go to ChatGPT, and let's say you just got a new puppy and you need to get them on flea and heartworm medicine. And honestly, I don't do this much research into flea and heartworm medicine. This is just an example, and sometimes examples go wrong, but here we go. But let's say you want to know, what's the best but cheapest way to make sure my dog gets heartworm and flea medicine every month? What brands? Do I get the combined dose? Do I get the separate dose? You go to ChatGPT with that question. ChatGPT is going to, on the back end, do its own version of a Google search. And it's called RAG. And I got it here in front of me. And it sounds sophisticated, and it is sophisticated, but that's essentially what they're doing. ChatGPT is processing multiple different queries within Google and getting back information. And it specifically does this for like items or products. That's where it's really important that we have those citations back to our site, because without those citations, like, we have no way to verify the information, but blah, 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 blah. And they also do a query fan out, a set of concurrent related queries generated by the model to request more information. So bottom line, if you do a query about, how to get cheap, effective heartworm and flea medicine for my new puppy, the AI agent is not just going to take what you typed into ChatGPT, copy and paste it into Google and do a search. That's not how it's going to do it. It's going to break down your question into multiple variants of the same question and go to Google, process all of those queries, and then come back to start to build a response to the prompt. And so it's essentially performing its own versions of Google search. And so in theory, if your website ranks well for heartworm medicine for dogs and has been determined by Google to be authoritative, and that's a huge piece of this puzzle right now, then your website will be at the type of Google search results for related queries about heartworm and flea medicine for dogs. And then that means it's more likely to be cited and referenced by the AI search. So yes, like, SEO is still relevant in this whole conversation, and we should still be doing SEO, but Google has also changed what it considers to be good content. And like, this is where we all need to be thinking like economists. Yeah, I think I said that right. Anyway, we all need to be thinking about the economics of this whole thing, because it's called commodity content for a reason, because it's cheap. So Google has basically said, we want non-commodity content. I also published another Substack article about this very thing. And if you go to Google's writing SEO guidelines for business owners, their bulleted list of guidance about how to make content basically says, be unique and original in 100 different ways. Nowhere in there does it say, make sure you're writing unique pages for all those cities in your region that you want to serve. It is saying your content needs to be unique. And that is a high bar. And that is not easy to do with ChatGPT, frankly, because once it became easy for websites, social media influencers, everyone else who relied on content creation, once it became easier to create content, the whole business of making money by writing content didn't just go away. It just became harder. And so the content creators on social media who are competing with these AI bots, one, they're calling out AI bots left and right. And two, they're getting more creative and also getting less polished, because AI videos tend to be hyper polished appearances and things like that. And so there are still people out there making money on TikTok and Instagram. And they're just now competing with the hordes of AI content creators who, do well for a little while, but then seem to taper off. I found one on LinkedIn like 2 weeks ago. Still wonder what their end game was. And so, the economics of this is when something becomes more accessible, when there's more supply of generic content, people look for other types of content, basically. My analogy isn't fully fleshed out, but they look for more. This is readily accessible, cheap, anyone can do it. It becomes less valuable. Now everyone is like, what's the next thing? And so writing a 1,500 word blog practice area page, whatever, that says nothing unique, says nothing original, Google says that's not valuable anymore. And so I think we've gotten into our heads a little bit, and that's where the magical thinking of SEO comes into play, into thinking ourselves like, we can write the content, we'll write good content. We just have to like trick Google into thinking our content is better than somebody else's website. If we schema markup this right, if we like structure our website right, if we do enough in links and out links, all of a sudden our article will be popular because Google recognizes it as good. And okay, that's fine. Site speed, schema markup, site structure, all of those things are important, but it's ignoring probably the biggest part of this, which is we want real people with money, with injuries, to read our page and say, geez, that's the law firm for me. And, they're not going to do that if your page is the same as somebody else's page. And expecting otherwise is unbelievable. I mean, honestly, and never forget that. That's who we're actually selling to. We're not trying to convince Google our website's better. We're not trying to convince ChatGPT our website's better. We're trying to convince people who read our content and decide if it's good enough. And so we need to stop, pretending that, the content part isn't important. It's actually very important. And it's making me look at this whole SEO piece in a whole other way. And so this type of content is non-commodity content. Non-commodity content. And non-commodity content, actually, I have a list of at least the content types that we're trying to work on and develop. I gotta pull my list up. Pregnant pause, but it's worth it. So, case results and case recaps. I have been up my clients' butts since I've started working with them. Like, pick a client. Ever since I started working with them, like, hey, you got any case results yet? And there are a few who are really good at getting me that information. And actually, we have a system set up with one law firm. The way they do their intake, notes are stored in lead docket. When the intake is complete, the case is signed. That client is sent to, I think, Case Peer now, but we're planning on switching. They work on the client and Case Peer. What's always hard is when the case closes. I usually don't know that. Like I'm actually rarely know when a law firm closes a case. And it's only when the attorney tells me. I've never had a paralegal be like, yeah, we closed a case today. Anyway, food for thought. But case results are something that can't be copied and pasted by another law firm without them committing outright fraud or plagiarism. And that is unique content. And historically, when we look at Google Analytics, and this was true before AI, this was true in 2018 when I was still kind of a baby marketer and looking at law firm websites, and I was like, geez, people really like visiting these case result pages. People really like reading about the $1 million result the attorney got, 10, 15 years ago. People really like reading, the biography pages. People already were drawn to that content that was unique and inherently unique to the law firm. And case results are it. Those are peak. And it's also peak because for marketing reasons. We need those to help promote your law firm. We need those case results to tell stories about on social media, to put on the website, to post about on LinkedIn. So getting the finalized case result and the award amount from your team to the marketing team, to the SEO team, that should be your top priority. I'm getting a little jaded. I'm almost at the point where, I don't want you to ask me about how many legal directories we got until you get me a case result. Come on, guys. But that kind of content should be easy to make. You should have a process for getting it, and it's non-commodity content. It's exactly the kind of stuff Google wants. I'm going to rattle off some of these just so you guys have them. client testimonials. If you're brave, you have at least one extrovert on your team, you should be inviting clients whose cases have settled into the office, sitting them up in front of a phone with a tripod and saying, well, I mean, ask them first, but tell us a little bit about your experience. And what most people are surprised to learn is people like to tell their stories. People like to tell their stories, even if it's a story you yourself wouldn't tell about yourself. I get that pushback from I don't really work with many criminal defense attorneys, but I get that pushback from them. It's yeah, who wants to leave a review for, a criminal defense firm? And it's you would be surprised. If you doubt that criminal defense attorneys can get reviews, just Google criminal defense attorneys near me, and you will see the law firms that have 300, 400, 500 criminal defense reviews. It's definitely doable. Case studies. Now, this is where things start to get more complicated and where you do need either an SEO team, an external vendor, or an in-house person handling and running this. Because there are a million ways that you can do, maybe not a million. There's probably a solid 50 ways that you could create a case study on a niche topic that's relevant to your practice area or your location. And you could even make it from your own data. Now, I've told people this is hey, why don't you try to publish a case study? We can do a case study about dog bites. We can do a press release about it. We could make some videos about it. And we could actually do a little bit of research into dog bite statistics in this community. And, there's some criteria to making it good. It has to be newsworthy, is what I tell people. And that's kind of a vague pin, but it definitely has to be something new, again, unique, something that hasn't been written before. And that's something we can meaningfully add information to the conversation. And even if it's a topic that's been talked about before, you can still write about it, but you do have to have a unique take or more information or elaborate on something that's, going to enhance the case study. Think about what kind of case studies, if you're into that, reading those would be interesting for you to read. And don't just make this I could see this kind of project quickly becoming let's just have ChatGPT write us 500 case studies, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, you're out of your mind if you don't think that's already been tried by 500 AI vibe coders who have set up and then demolished 1,000 billion websites using AI content. AI content ain't it. All right, it ain't it. Stop trying to make it a thing. You can try, I say all that, I poo-poo it, and I'm you can try. You can try. Nobody has to take my word on that. You can test it. You can test the AI content and see how it performs in the wild. I have. It sucks. But I digress. Don't take the lazy route here. You have to start putting effort into your content. And the good news is that this isn't going to be something that you have to publish once a week. Once a month is fine. And I'm kind of realizing I'm spending a lot of time talking about content. I'm spending a lot of time talking about this unique content. I've been getting on the soapbox and just beating it like a dead horse because I really want people to get the message that the blog content that's easily produced and recyclable isn't helping you. And we're talking about AGO, AEO today. But all of this uniqueness, non-commodity, whatever, individuality, it ties into a bigger marketing concept, which some people are kind of allergic to, which is branding, right? We're talking about developing a brand identity that is unique enough that it stands out in the marketing place, that has a unique voice. And that ultimately is how you're going to dominate AI search. So here's something important to understand about AI, because AI uses Google, it queries Google, and it comes back and gives citations, right? But also AI is a trained machine. So the process of training an LLM, I'm going to keep it real simple. Let's say you got a little box. It's a little machine in a box. And up top here, you put in text. And then on the front's little computer screen, you tell the box what text you put in there. And then the box, takes in the text and the information. It switches the gears inside, changes the machinery inside, and then boom. Now you run some more text through it and you program it in. Let's say we're doing Shakespeare. You give it a Shakespearean sonnet. This is Shakespeare. Okay, the machine reconfigures. Now it understands a little bit more about what Shakespeare sounds like. And then you do it again. This is also Shakespeare. Boop. Okay, and it reconfigures itself, blah, blah, blah. Now imagine you do that process with every publicly available web page on the internet, and you give it huge amounts of detail on what's in each page. You tell it how to interpret the information, and you do that with many humans who are also helping tell the AI about the information it's taking in and how to interpret it. You have a bunch of people chat with it that reinforces that data. That's how you end up with ChatGPT, basically, right? That's machine learning, which, we used to care a lot about the distinction between machine learning and AI. But in ChatGPT and large language models, that is machine learning, not true AI. Now, I haven't heard somebody bring that up since ChatGPT came out, the distinction between machine learning and AI. And some people will go hard against me and be like, no, girl, this is AI. And I'm like, no, bro, it ain't. But, ChatGPT maybe lives somewhere between, I feel like it's fully machine learning, right? So that's what we're talking about, is this box that we fed information through. We told it what the information was, and it continually reconfigured itself until it was trained. All right. And then it was released to the public and people started chatting with it. And that's ChatGPT. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves as AI search experts, I don't feel like they could, there's no way there could exist an AI search expert. It's too new. It's would you be an expert in something if you've only studied it for 6 months? I don't know, but okay. And it changes all the time, but now I'm going to get off on a different thing. But that's ChatGPT. And what we're going to do, what we have to ask ourselves as AI search experts is how often is that model, that box, retrained? When does ChatGPT come back and say, here's some more information from the internet and here's what it means? And you might say to yourself, oh, Tifiny, it's training itself all the time. No. The process of training a large language model or any kind of machine learning algorithm is highly curated. And ChatGPT, Anthropic, Perplexity have all hired developers, coders. There's a guy on Twitter who talked about how he worked for ChatGPT as somebody who's an expert in Python, I think. And ChatGPT would give the human a Python problem to solve. He would solve it and then basically tell ChatGPT his thinking processes. He was training the model, and that is a curated training process. Your chats are stored in the history, but they're not training the model. And that's it would never work like that because it's a huge security vulnerability. So you can't open ChatGPT and type in, Morgan and Morgan 1,000 times and train the model to think Morgan and Morgan is the best law firm or the most prominent. That's not how it works. The AI agent is taken offline. It's trained in a highly curated, careful process, and then given back as an updated model. Now, Google would update its algorithm periodically. And then search results would change day to day. It was very a rapid kind of head spinning turn sometimes. I don't kind of hate my profile, but now you guys have seen it. Day to day search results would change, month to month, week to week. There's always minor adjustments. And then somebody else over here, a competitor, would relaunch their new website and it was 10 times better than ours. And all of a sudden, like, where did our rankings go? That kind of stuff happened with Google on a daily basis. But, ChatGPT, if we're to take each new release of the model, like I think we're on 3 or 4, maybe 5, like it's only updated it 5 times. It's only retrained it 5 times. And so, there might be a span of 6, 12 months for you as a business owner to add new content to the internet, because basically that's how ChatGPT is going to, I kind of explained that badly, but let's say you wanted to approach this by like, okay, I want to make sure ChatGPT, when it's retrained, is trained on a lot of my stuff, like a lot of my brand stuff. So I'm going to go to my website and publish a bunch of content about my law firm. Then when ChatGPT like takes the pages from my site and uses them to train its model, it's going to see my brand name, my business name, my name. It's going to see all of these things and maybe recommend me more. Now, I think that's the thinking behind, AGO broadly. We want to train the model to recommend us more. But that's the process of training the model. It happens infrequently. It's a highly curated process. And I find it pretty unlikely that ChatGPT is going to look at personal injury law firm websites as like, oh, this is the data we need to train our model on. Probably not. Like, let's be honest. So I feel like if that's what we're talking about, I think it's viable. Like if you have it's viable if a lot of websites are talking about your brand that aren't your brand. So think about that. So let's say ChatGPT, instead of expecting it to train itself on our website content, we expect ChatGPT to go to Super Lawyers, Avo, Martindale, whatever. These sites, huge. Google already considers them authoritative, and they're going to believe those are a more trustworthy reference for a law firm than your website specifically. And so it's important to keep that in mind. Google now, and for a long time, has considered off-website signals more important signals about your brand than your website itself, right? Because anyone can buy a website and just say, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. But that does not really mean you're the best, right? And so what's more authoritative? What you say about yourself or what all of these other websites say about you? And so that's why, like a lot of times when you're talking about AGO or AEO, you're talking about how do we optimize how we appear on Reddit. That's really big right now. On directory websites, top 10 list. And top 10 lists, like Google is pretty, like there's been a lot, publishing a listicle on your site is not going to have a lot of SEO value, but that is different than the listicles that Yelp publishes. Top 10 plumbers in Warrington, Virginia. That's also a listicle, but that has also traditionally been very authoritative and ranked really well for our keywords, right? So what somebody else says about your brand is more authoritative than what your own website says. So it's important to curate these off website experiences. Going back to this content list about case studies. That's why digital PR and case studies were and still remain a big thing. The difficulty is getting external websites to pick them up and talk about them. So the other types of content that you can do, attorney reaction videos. So YouTube is a huge piece of this, right? So YouTube is another external website about your brand. And unlike pure text, AI video is still pretty hard to fake. And it's also hard to fake on a long form video. And generally YouTube polices, its content pretty well. AI content is a problem for all of these platforms, and I wish they would spend more time minimalizing them. But YouTube is its own search engine. Google owns it. Videos tend to be more authoritative than just pure text, and it's really hard to fake. If you're this is why I like doing these live videos. If you're a human being in front of a camera with a slightly asymmetrical face, you didn't put on makeup this morning, but thank goodness for filters, and hair's kind of a mess, and you stutter and stammer, and I forget what I was going to say here, you cannot fake how messy I am. And which is part of the reason why I like to be a little candid online. This stuff is not AI. And with long form video, it's kind of the same. You have to commit to it. You have to record the content, and your face, your mannerisms cannot be faked. No law firm can come along and say, that's a good website article, forward it to their marketing team, do the same thing. You would have to actually record that video. And that's kind of the unfortunate part of all of this. If you are a law firm and you are saying, you're talking to me about making unique content, you're talking to me about making video, you're talking to me about getting mentioned on other people's websites, how do I do that? Like, the SEO company isn't doing that for you now, unless they're updating directories for you. So like, how do you achieve that? I mean, hopefully you're busy and working on cases. You need a marketing team, all right? You could outsource this to AI. And this is why I roll my eyes with the like, oh, get 6 Claude agents and they'll like train each other to make you unique content. No, they won't. Don't be silly. They will make you generic content that sounds exactly like something else that AI is making for another law firm. And they you can do AI video, but people clock that really fast. I mean, just go try to find AI video in the wild. You will find that people are commenting. There are people commenting now on social media and saying they will not buy from a company that uses AI, period. Now, I bet they're not all that serious, but if that's the sentiment now, and you think you're going to get traction with an AI HeyGen video, I'll just save you some time and say, no, you won't. All right. You have to take the time to make this content, or hire somebody who's really good at creating unique content. A lot of the marketing directors I talk to they are the ones writing the newsletter. And sometimes their name is on the authorship. They're getting referred cases in a way, but the attorney is just like, oh, they just handle the newsletter. It takes a person to be an individual to create this unique content, and you have to have the time to do it. It's not easy. And if you try to make it easy, it won't work. So I already mentioned biographies briefly, and it ended up being like one of the ones that were kind of lower on my list of unique content that you can make. But I'm going to close up the live stream soon. So I'm going to leave you with a few of these that should be easy for you to do. So you're just not like, how do I make unique stuff? Biographies of the attorneys and staff. Look at your biography on your website. 1, are you happy with it? And if not, that's a good reason to change it. 2, it probably is dated. Take your AI headshot off there. Again, people really do not like that stuff. And then 3, just add information. Just add information about you. Pay careful attention to the opening paragraph and telling your story. You're not trying to impress, a new boss. You're not trying to put your resume on your bio. Talk about who you are. And people really connect with that. People want to feel like they know their attorney. There are some people who just really like the idea, I got an attorney. I was at a friends gathering, I think a few years ago, and some guy was there who got in a DUI. I'm just going to tell you, it's not a close friend of mine. And he goes back to the same DUI attorney to get his DUIs cleared. And at that party, I swear probably 3 or 4 times, somebody asked something. He was like, I know an attorney, this guy was his best friend. But I knew for a fact, I didn't know who the attorney was, and I barely knew that guy, but I bet you him and the attorney weren't all that close. but that attorney was good enough at marketing that that man connected with him and basically considered him a dear friend. And hopefully he's not like calling him or sending him a bunch of unwanted emails and acting like a stalker. But think about that. People want to connect with others. You know, loneliness is an epidemic online and right now. Apparently, I got 17 chickens and like too many dogs and kids. So I don't want the opposite of that right now, but live some time alone. But loneliness is an epidemic. And people want to connect with others. You know, they really want to feel like they know a guy, you know, and they want to know an attorney. And it could be you if you like connect with them through your biography, make sure that their case is handled well, they get a lot of communication, and make sure, you know, they hear from you like more than like once a year, you know, through simple trinkets, cards. You have no idea how big of an impression those things make. And so, I mean, you know, I dovetailed from AI search down to like straight up community marketing and just customer service, but start with your biography, make it about you, make it good, make it something that you're proud to put forth. And then, you know, make it, you know, something that people can connect with, something that people will read and feel like they know you as a person. And similarly to that, about the firm pages, core value pages, I saw a lot of firms creating core value and about us pages. It felt like a trend for a while. And then I visited a few attorneys' websites that do not have about the firm pages and do not have their core values listed. But if we're talking about unique content, those are two really easy things, hopefully easy things that your marketing team can make about the firm, our core values, put on the site, and nobody can copy and paste it. Nobody can take that from you. That is unique content. Make it. It should be accessible. Don't overlook this stuff because it's common or it seems easy. Your about the firm page should be like, honestly, like the about the firm page should be the one of the coolest pages on your website. It should have pictures of your team. It should have a long story about how the company was started, who you serve, you know, intermixed with like case results and team photos. Like that's low hanging fruit. You know, go look at your about the firm page and update it and just make your firm sound awesome. And like that's that, again, people can't copy and paste that. And Google will crawl that and probably index it because this is a page about the brand that has a ton of information that's going to be relevant when somebody says, you know, hey, ChatGPT, what's a law firm that really takes care of its staff? It's going to know that you have that about the firm page with 6 videos of holiday parties and happy team members. And it's going to say, well, blah, 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 you know, so-and-so law firm has a, you know, a page about how well it takes care of its team or about the firm page. I don't know. Like it's going to make that calculation. It's going to make that connection because I know there are a bunch of firms that have 0 on those pages, absolutely nothing. And so that's low hanging fruit. And I mean, don't worry about like your Google business description's important. Your Google business listing, super important. But on the website and with this unique content, we can have fun. Finally. Oh my gosh. Like have fun on your about the firm page because if you're having fun, the content is going to be unique. People are going to connect with it emotionally. And it's going to do more than a formulaic city injury page published on your website. Client worksheets. I have this list here and I'll share in this article when it goes out. But so I've talked almost an hour. My voice is done for the moment. And I hope you guys got something out of this. Hope we covered the topic thoroughly enough. There's so much here and I don't know everything. I am learning about AI search and really I'm still learning about SEO in real time. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm just a fan, a real big fan, I guess, you know. And so it's an ever evolving practice and I be wary of these companies, of these freelancers. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. You know, we all learn to ignore the, I can get you on page 1 of Google in 2 weeks. Like, we learn to ignore those emails because they're bullshit. But I see a lot of smart people falling for the same AGO, AI optimization scams, I guess. But like, I do not know of like a standardized AI optimization program or service that has a track history of working that isn't already rooted in just good SEO, because that's what these companies know how to do well. The good ones, that's what these companies know how to do well, and that is still relevant to AI search. But we're looking at a future, and this is part of what I don't quite understand yet, but is very interesting, is we're looking at a future where we may not have websites as we think of them. Instead, what we have is a publicly available AI agent, and somebody interacts with that agent. You know, hey, do you guys handle car accident cases? Yeah? Okay, I was in a car accident last week. I was rear-ended at a stoplight. Oh, let me connect you to the intake team. Hold on, I have a few questions. I feel like all of our websites are going to turn into like these chat bots, and maybe they have like an appearance, like a homepage on a site, or maybe they don't. And then they interact with either the user or the user's AI agent, which will probably be a Google agent, let's just be honest. And we may not have websites as we think of them now. Maybe we do. Maybe they still stay around the same way. You know, a lot of things that are old but still really good stay around. But I think that's kind of where Google thinks we're heading. You know, we're heading for a future of, you know, customer AI agent interacts with business AI agent, has a transaction, and poof. I think that's where we're going when it comes to websites. And when we get there, the question of what kind of content we should be publishing will become more driven by system needs than like an individual's enjoyment or interpretation of the piece, you know, because the agent will be reading our articles, not the human being. And so hopefully it doesn't look that bleak, you know, and we still have websites, because in my view, websites are fun. Like, websites are great. And we've all been too freaking scared to do anything that will hurt us. You know, will Google hurt us if we do this? Oh no. It's like maybe we should just stop caring about that and look at our websites and say, how do I make this appealing to a person? Like, what would make this fun? What would make this unique? What actually represents us? Instead of like, oh, does Google like this? Oh my gosh, I hate that. But have fun. Look at your website and say, we don't have to stick to a formula anymore. We can write, you know, content that's about us, that people are actually interested in, that people can connect with emotionally. We'll talk about the real case results we've got, which people just find interesting anyway. And we'll stop, you know, trying to be a slave to how to get to page 1. So thank you guys for listening. Talk to you soon.